Okay, so good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Virginia Ungar. I'm a training analyst at the Buenos Aires Psychoanalytic Association and a former president of the IPA, serving from 2017 to 2021. I welcome you to this webinar that has to do with the forthcoming IPA elections. Due to time constraints, we will hear the proposal of each of the 10 candidates for representative to the North American Region Board in 5 minutes. So it will be very summarized. But we want to provide a space for question and answer as a way of exchanging ideas. And now I will start with introducing each candidate in strict alphabetical order. And as I said, we will listen them for 5 minutes. Sorry for repeating this. Once the presentations are over, we will have time to ask questions, but I will, to a Q&A section, but I will explain this later when we finish the presentation. So now we will start with because it's alphabetical order last name. So Agastuma. I cannot see him, but maybe something that has to do to now we are okay. So I will introduce you. Okay, so is Agatsuma is a MD and PhD. Is a training and supervising analyst of the Japan Psychoanalytic Society, where he's a member of the executive committee of GPS and the chair of the Public Relations Committee. He currently serves as a North American board representative to the IPA board. He's a professor of psychiatry and clinical psychology at Sophia University in Tokyo and in private practice. He completed his psychiatric residency at Albert Einstein College of Medicine and then his analytic training at the William Alanson White Institutes, both in New York. So let's start.
Well, okay. Hi, I'm Agatsuma. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. I'm deeply honored to stand before you today as a candidate for re-election for an IPA Board North American representative position. As I was introduced, I'm a training and supervising analyst in Japan Psychoanalytic Society. I also practice in Tokyo as well as in Kobe, which is located near Osaka. Japan Psychoanalytic Society currently has 44 members and 23 candidates, where I actively am involved in teaching. We also have a program for psychotherapists where we are training sizable number of psychotherapy trainees as well. Over the past 2 years, serving on the IPA board has been an invaluable experience for me. I just happened to be the first board member from the Asia region. This journey has been incredibly enriching, particularly in sharing insights and collaborating with colleagues from other countries, as well as with colleagues from Japan and the broader Asia-Pacific region. It was my great pleasure to be able to present ideas and opinions from a somewhat different perspective. and I'm deeply grateful that my thoughts have been well heard at the board meetings. I have come to appreciate the IPA's firm commitment to inclusiveness and diversity. So I would greatly appreciate it if I could continue my work into my second term. If re-elected, I will try to stay committed to ensuring that voices from both North America and Asia Pacific region continue to be heard and integrated into the IPA's vision. Meanwhile, of course, my dedication also extends to the global psychedelic community. I think each region possesses unique characteristics and potentials, and the challenge lies in honoring these traditions while embracing innovations that can benefit the IPA as a whole. I believe in the concept of being conservatively innovative, I would say, by which I mean respecting the rich history and accumulated knowledge of our field while also being open to new ideas and adapting to the challenges of the 21st century. What is crucial, I think, is to strike a balance between tradition and innovation. I think we should embrace newly available technologies, while we must also ensure that we do not lose sight of our core clinical traditions and values. At the same time, being too rigid and resistant to the change can be equally damaging. Regarding the use of sessions, I believe the IPA has reached a fairly good compromise at this point by allowing telesessions to a significant extent while preserving the value of in-person sessions. I certainly see the practical benefits of telesessions. However, how to balance in-person sessions and telesessions in training analysis remains a delicate and complex issue. Many problems need to be solved before we can reach a convincing solution. That's exactly why the board has decided to re-examine this issue in a few years. Related to this, the current controversy regarding APSA regional association status has to be mentioned. The IPA's commitment to ensuring that psychedelic training adapts to the realities of each region while finding some internationally held common ground, I think it is very important. So I support the current IPA APSA proposal. Thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for keeping the time. And now we will hear Richard Frisch's presentation. So I will be introducing him. Richard Frisch is a supervising and training analyst at the Washington-Baltimore Psychoanalytic Institute. He is chair of the Psychoanalytic Education Committee and co-chair of APSA's recent graduate committee. He is associate professor of clinical psychiatry at the George Washington University School of Medicine and has a private practice of psychoanalysis and clinical psychology in Washington, D.C. So we will hear you.
Thank you, Virginia. I imagine most of us doing these presentations are a bit uncomfortable extolling our own virtues. Golda Meir, in a meeting with a self-effacing diplomat, reportedly said, "Don't be so humble. You're not that great." With that in mind, I am Richard Fritsch, and I present my qualifications and interest in being an IPA board representative from North America. I believe prior experience with governance and familiarity with the IPA matters for this position. I've been in a dual administrative clinical role for most of my career, and I've worked within the IPA governance for the last 8 years. I was elected to be the director of the Washington Institute just after I was appointed a training and supervisory analyst. I asked a colleague why I had been chosen. He said the group thought I had the qualities to lead in new ways. These include a fundamental respect for others' point of view, a natural tendency for a horizontal leadership style, having a vision for new solutions, and a willingness to work hard to actualize that vision. As training director, I mobilized the community to create a combined training of candidates, psychotherapists, and scholars. This combined program, while not new, was implemented in novel ways and has been adopted by a number of other APSA and SIPS institutes. Relevant to today, the Education Committee was deeply divided about giving up a traditional model to move to one more in sync with contemporary sensibilities. Finding a consensus among analysts with deeply held different convictions requires effective leadership to move the mission forward. I know APSA. Among other roles, I was the first chair of the Training and Education section of the Department of Psychoanalytic Education. I supported the development of a task force on virtual training. I believe that psychoanalytic training should be available to interested students worldwide. The IPA and psychoanalysis will prosper with contributions from new voices. I also started a recent graduates committee that supports the development of early career analysts. I believe that we need to pay attention to recent graduates for their sake and for the sake of our profession. In 2017, Virginia Unger appointed me to the Psychoanalytic Education Committee. In 2021, Harriet Wolf appointed me chair. I've learned much from my international colleagues, which has broadened and deepened my appreciation for psychoanalysis. In an effort to maintain quality training without central oversight, the committee initiated a horizontally based peer review process in which institutes meet to exchange ideas about policies and procedures. This forum has been well received worldwide. The initiative is consistent with my views that respects local autonomy and values both tradition and innovation. I want to bring these ideas I've garnered from this work to address the current challenges in the IPA. The Psychoanalytic Education Committee, under my leadership, has advocated for principle-based training guidelines rather than mostly rule-based standards. However, we are an association of institutes and members. To belong to a group, as Freud so cogently taught us, one must relinquish some autonomy and consciously and unconsciously identify with a shared mission. Diversity of experience and views within a sturdy frame is essential for our organization to thrive. The most recent controversy about teletraining is but one of the many past, present, and future issues that is seen differently depending on local circumstances. If elected, I will be an advocate for supporting local autonomy, with the understanding that not everything goes when one belongs to a group. If elected, you can count on me to advocate for innovation, to respect tradition, and to search for creative solutions to old and new problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick, and thank you for keeping the time. Now we will hear I will introduce Bill Glover, and then we will hear his presentation. Bill Glover is incumbent, and he served on the IPA board previously during the administration of Charles Hanley, Stefano Bolognini, and with my administration. He has been active in various roles on the clinical working parties of comparative clinical methods, initiating psychoanalysis, and on the clinical observation work group. Bill is a training and supervising analyst at the San Francisco Center for Psychoanalysis, where he has served as president and chair of the Psychoanalytic Education Division, of which he is currently the vice chair. He's a past president of the American Psychoanalytical Association. Please go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Virginia. It's a pleasure to be here and such a strong field of candidates to really give our colleagues in North America a choice. And I want to thank the North American Nominating Committee and Leslie Brissett, our board secretary, for making that happen, for assisting it. No, I like to say that psychoanalysis is more than a profession. It's obvious, but I think we sometimes forget it. And that the IPA is positioned to both lead the profession and the broader movement. And we see signs of that happening in what we could call the turn, or better put, the return to the social in psychoanalysis. But not only the social, also a concern for the environment. So that we're adding the social unconscious and even the planetary unconscious to our field of examination. And I believe there's a false dichotomy that occurs when we speak about as too social or as becoming sociology, that the social and the clinical and the environmental are all intertwined. And I think we're coming to recognize that and integrate them. Now, there's also another controversy that happens around what's the role of activism in psychoanalysis. And we hear that it's too political or too sociological and not clinical enough. And again, these things are intertwined. And I think that we're recognizing that and starting to speak about it, but with hesitation. For example, if we can't talk about Israel and Gaza, who can? If we can't examine racial inequality and injustice, who can? And one of the things I'm proud about in my history is in my time as president at APSA, I was served on the Holmes Commission for study of racial inequity in psychoanalysis, and that work goes forward. And also, like this, another idea, part of the broader movement is psychoanalysis in the community, which Virginia was very instrumental in spearheading. And I like to think that it's not only in the community, but it's with the community of mental health professionals, healthcare disciplines, related disciplines, and interested citizens in bringing humanistic psychoanalytic values to the world. And I happen to live in the, I'm speaking to you from my office in what's sometimes referred to as the People's Republic of Berkeley. So that I live in a bubble, I think that many of us do. And sometimes we can isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. And I think that's a mistake. We need to meet them. Now, to be more effective in leading the broader movement, I think we need to set our own house more in order. I'm coming to think that a lot of our controversy about our internal struggles are also social defenses about what's going on in the world around us. So we fight over what we think we have the illusion of we can control because we feel so unable to affect what's happening around us. Now, I think it's for, in terms of my platform, we might say, I'm interested in that we bring more value to members. There's too big a gap between the IPA and its members. For many, the IPA is distant presence, and they may never be able to come to a meeting or participate in committees, etc. However, we have a new tool, not so new anymore, but we're starting to use, and we should make the maximum use of, which is technology. Despite our hesitation about teleanalysis, I think we are embracing and should make more use of means of technology to meet together like we are today, to be able to talk with our members, the people interested in the election. Now, I want to make sure I get to my points. So we also face immediate concerns and threats of secession from the IPA, both around teleanalysis and around the regional association. Around teleanalysis, my position is that we need to recognize reality, and I think we are. We need to make a place for teleanalysis in training, and we need to have training in teleanalysis. And I think there are steps in both directions happening. Now, maybe the thing I want to emphasize is as the rules change, removing the regional association is on this ballot in the election we are running in. North American turnout in the IPA elections has been notoriously low. I think particularly because of APSA, where our members are perhaps the most distant from the IPA. And I think we need to close that gap and turn out the vote in North America, because what's happening is there's a narrative developing for some of the people who oppose losing the regional association that the IPA wants to take over and subjugate APSA. So as I think we know, the IPA is not an evil empire. We have our tensions between the IPA as a regulatory body and as a federation, a collective. I think it is both. And if you follow the history, it oscillates back and forth, but we usually work it out. And I think we're in the process of doing that. And around teleanalysis.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
I gotta go. Okay, thank you. I'll just close by saying.
Wrap up, yes.
I will. I just want to say that I hope all of us share these views about that the IPA as a threat to American independence is a false narrative, and that you will join in trying to convince our electorate of that, or those who agree with us to turn out and vote, so that we have a strong representation of views within North America. Thank you. Thank
you, Bill. Now we will go. I will introduce Margaret Ann Fitzpatrick Hanley. She's from the. I'm not mentioning your societies or institute, because you will tell us about your. Okay, now I will introduce Margaret Ann, PhD. She's a member of the IPA Board of Representatives, a training and supervising psychoanalyst in the Toronto Institute, past director and past president of the Canadian Psychoanalytic Society. Dr. Hanley was a member of the IPA Committee on Public Information in 2008 and co-chair of the IPA Committee on Psychoanalysis and Psychotherapy 2004, and chair of the IPA Committee on Clinical Observation from 2017 until 2023, moderating IPA 3LM clinical groups at IPA congresses and meetings of IPA regional organizations. She's on the editorial board of the Psychoanalytic Quarterly, the International and the Canadian Journals of Psychoanalysis. Her many published books include Applied Psychoanalytic Studies, Jane Austen, Sibling Rivalry, Unconscious Fantasy and Change, and Clinical Case Studies in Change Through Time in Psychoanalysis, Transformations and Interpretations. So Margaret Ann, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Virginia. Nice to see all my colleagues here this morning, and thank you all for coming out to hear us. When I was thinking about this talk, I asked myself, so what can I contribute to being on the IPA board for a second term? Well, the first thing my colleagues have said to me over these past 2 years is that I bring a lot of history of the IPA, many contexts for policy discussion that go back decades, as well as enthusiasm for all the association does and all it does right now. So as Virginia said, I participated and given papers in congresses in the IPA continuously since 1983. That's 40 years. So then, and I had the privilege of chairing IPA committees, the Committee on Clinical Observation for the past 8 years rather, till 2023. And in that committee, I got to know colleagues and their work as psychoanalysts, as clinical psychoanalysts, and their problems in their institutes up close and throughout the IPA. So next I thought about the central aims of the IPA, right, as they've been and as they are, and as we reviewed them as a board, right? And it was to specify foundational training principles for psychoanalysis, to foster and enhance members' sense of belonging to an international psychoanalytic community, to ensure the vigorous development of clinical psychoanalysis and theoretical pluralism. So what have I brought and what do I bring to this mission, to these goals? Well, to foundational training principles. I mean, after all, that's what we intensely argue about throughout our organization, and all our institutes talk with our candidates about, because the IPA has a job of professional development and community post-graduation, but one of its most important is for the few years that our candidates are in our institutes, training to become the future of psychoanalysis. We don't have any control or any wish to control practices after graduation, except to help people do work together and to track the unconscious, which is so elusive and specific to psychoanalysis. So as director of my own institute and chair of candidate progression for 10 years and now again for 5 years, I talk to the candidates all the time. I talk to them about their problems. I talk to them about why we ask them to do what they do, how they want to become psychoanalysts. They've been many other kinds of psychotherapists and counselors and other things, but now they want to become psychoanalysts. So we talk to them about how best to prepare the candidates who will be the future of psychoanalysis. In my professional work, I really think that moderating IPA working parties, right? Comparative clinical methods, end of training evaluation, IPA 3-level model in all the regions of the IPA has kept me in the front line. Now, thinking modestly, realistically about the transmission of psychoanalysis. So that's what I bring to the board discussion. And then how do we ensure vigorous development of clinical psychoanalysis? Well, I've looked over the website and I just thought, wow, we're doing a lot of work with our clinical groups and discussion groups online now. And we have different cultures and different languages presenting. And as president of the Canadian Society, and a member of the Canadian Institute, I've worked with French and Anglo cultures, right? I trained in a French model. I practiced in the Eidingen. I presented on panels with intense discussion, debate, mutual respect between our cultures in Canada. And that's been helpful for board discussions because we have different strong regional cultures of psychoanalysis. They are good. And they bring differences in terms of what theories they bring to bear on what the setting should be and what the work of the analyst should be in our policies as on the board of the IPA. With respect to the new procedural code, I'll speak a little more later, but I'll just say we have a new procedural code. It's been worked on for many, many years. We have a research project now. So now it's time to sort of see how that goes in all of our institutes and societies in North America and the world, and settle into it and remain open-minded and respectful and listen. There's going to be a lot of listening to this research and this thinking about our, fundamental role, mission of the IPA, which is these foundational principles of training and professional development also. So I thank you all for listening, and I look forward very much to work with colleagues in the IPA as I've loved it for many decades. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret Ann. You kept the time, and thank you very much. And now I will introduce Maria Nardone. Nardone or Nardoni? I don't know. Nardone.
Both are okay.
Okay. Dr. Maria Nardone is a graduate of the William Alanson White Institute, the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, and a member of the American Psychoanalytic Association, where she held leadership roles in all 3 organizations. Currently, she serves on the IPA board, is co-director of APSA's Social Issues Department and its program chair for NAPSAC. At William Alanson White Institute, she recently concluded terms as Director of Technology and Global Learning and as a Director of the Center of Public Mental Health. She is adjunct Associate Professor at Fordham University. For more than 30 years, Dr. Nardoni served as an expert witness of immigration cases. So Maria, we will hear you.
Thank you, Virginia. Dear colleagues, I'm honored to be nominated for a second term as North American representative to the IPA board. My commitment to serving on the IPA board stems from a deep passion for expanding access to psychoanalytic education globally. As William Alanson White Institute's Director of Technology and Global Learning, I worked closely with psychotherapy candidates from remote regions in Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. These experiences underscored the profound desire of clinicians in underserved areas to access psychoanalytic education and connect with a global community. During our recent IPA town halls with members about changes to training standards, I listened to candidates in North America and other regions isolated by distance or with limited access to training analysts. I firmly believe that the IPA must continue to prioritize inclusive practices that accommodate and support all candidates and institutes, and enabling them to flourish and contribute to our field. There must be a path for training and IPA membership for all candidates that successfully complete their training. A global organization must show compassion and be supportive of local challenges while maintaining universal standards. A global organization has a responsibility not only to uphold universal standards, but also to adapt to the local realities that shape our field. An important initiative on the IPA board's agenda is the proposal to transition APSA from a regional association to a component society. I'm very aware that not everyone in APSA agrees with the change. It means less freedom to proceed independently and will require close collaboration and negotiation with other regions. However, I support the compromise that was reached by the work group and the 5-year transition period. I see APSA's continued role and participation in the IPA as critical in furthering the development of training standards that support a diverse global organization. From 2020 to 2024, I led our Institute's Technology and Global Learning Committee, which launched an online series confronting racism, discrimination, and othering, perspectives from around the world. This free global initiative brought together voices from diverse cultural and professional backgrounds, including lawyers, anthropologists, sociologists, even museum directors from several different countries, creating a vibrant dialogue that enriched our understanding while deepening psychoanalytic understanding of critical social issues, including racism and slavery. With over 5,000 viewers across the globe accessing the recorded sessions on the Institute's YouTube channel, the series demonstrated how accessible, innovative psychoanalytic education can have far-reaching impact. This experience of learning from other regions, cultures, and disciplines was a helpful background for my participation in the IPA board. My dedication to psychoanalytic work extends to community engagement through private practice, APSA's Social Issues Department, and the Center for Public Mental Health at White. Since 1989, I served as an expert witness for over 500 immigrant families seeking cancellation of removal or asylum, educating the courts about trauma, child development, and other psychoanalytic concepts to influence their judgments. In 2016, I helped establish our Institute's Center for Public Mental Health, where our first initiative addressed the immigration crisis. Partnering with Appleseed Network, a nonprofit of lawyers working with immigrants, We developed and distributed educational materials in English and Spanish to help families and children cope with the psychological challenges of deportation. These resources continue to reach immigrant communities and legal advocates throughout the U.S., Mexico, and Latin America. My global experiences and perspectives are integral to my professional identity and inform my contributions to the IPA. I am deeply grateful to my fellow board members for broadening my understanding of the challenges that exist in all the regions. It is critical and challenging to maintain an international mindset while leaving room for plurality and consideration of local needs. If elected, I will continue to bring this vision, energy, and commitment to the board, working collaboratively to advance the mission of the IPA and to shape a more inclusive future for our field. Thank you for your consideration and support.
Virginia, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you for reminding me. So I will start again. Dr. Dion Powell is a training and supervising psychoanalyst at Columbia University, New York, and the Psychoanalytic Association of New York. She is chair of the Psychoanalytic Association of New York's Education Committee, co-chair of the Holmes Commission, and vice president of the American Association for Psychoanalytic Education. Recent scholarly contributions include In Pursuit of Racial Equality in American Psychoanalysis, Findings and Recommendations from the Holmes Commission, Holmes, and it was also published at the Journal of the American Psychoanalytic Association. So, Dion,
Thank you, Virginia. Hi, everyone. I would be a newbie if you vote for me to represent the IPA. And I want to try to introduce myself. For those of us who were in San Francisco last week at the American Psychoanalytic meetings, it was refreshing and rejuvenating to see friends and colleagues and make new ones. Throughout the course of my career, I've chosen to get involved locally at my training institute, Columbia, as a faculty rep for over 10 years, as chair of the Training and Supervising Analyst Committee on Columbia's Executive Committee, and currently as chair of the Education Committee at the Psychoanalytic Association of New York, and as a member of PANI's Progression Committee. I am deeply invested in psychoanalytic education, training and promoting psychoanalytic ideas, having taught the psychoanalytic fellows at various institutes, meeting with psychiatry residents and graduate students at case conferences, teaching for decades in the psychodynamic psychotherapy program, and supervising and analyzing psychoanalytic candidates. Nationally, I've been in leadership positions at APSA and served on leadership positions at APSA's Executive Committee, a part of the historic transformation of APSA's structure requiring a collegial, respectful approach to listen and seek compromise, both within APSA's Executive Committee and with membership during one of the most contentious periods of APSA's history. I've continued to advocate for psychoanalytic education as vice president of the American Association for Psychoanalytic Education, where to an expanded psychoanalytic body, we include 8 institutes. But as an expanded body, we have provided consultations, workshops, and webinars on the most controversial topics of our time, including remote learning, immersion, diversity, supervision, and analytic frequency for trainees, issues representative of contemporary psychoanalysis. Internationally, I participated in IPA panels and attended IPA working party groups on frequency and therapeutic action. Inspired by my experience in Prague at the 2013 IPA Congress with the theme Facing the Pain, I began my 2018 JAPA paper, Race, African Americans, and Psychoanalysis, collective silence in the therapeutic situation by describing this tense moment of silence that occurred at the beginning of the large group discussion there. Inspired by the theme of the 53rd IPA Congress, Mine in the Line of Fire, my approach is to go into the fire where controversy, dialogue, and compromise can emerge. For that Congress, I created a panel, Psychic Consequences of Slavery in the Western Hemisphere, substantiating the global impact of othering on humanity. This theme is reflected in my writing. As co-chair of the Holmes Commission from 2020 to 2024, I continue to embrace compromise and dialogue as the most effective tools for change. The Holmes Commission work encompassed all facets of North American psychoanalysis beyond APSA and helped me make me learn more about different regions and organizations' experiences with psychoanalytic education. My invitation to consult on prejudice and discrimination at the 2022 IPA board meeting in Washington, D.C. allowed me to get to know the current board members, but most importantly, for the board members to get to know each other in an enhancing way, generating a request that I consider running for the board, which I'm doing now. These are exciting times for the IPA. As North American representative of the IPA board, I offer Midwestern practicality that advocates for trust, integrity, excellence in education, and consensus building to apply psychoanalytic ideas and principles in understanding our evolving world. As one of our North American representatives to the board, I look to bring my many years of experience in psychoanalytic education, including making a contribution with the other members of the board, which are, I think we should expand the board. There's so many excellent people applying. On some of the most vexing issues facing our times, including how to provide solid psychoanalytic education where new technologies offer remote learning. Psychoanalysis is built on immersion, our ability to make contact with the unconscious and with the minds of those we analyze, supervise, and teach. AI and new ways to communicate virtually have expanded psychoanalysis reach and yet provide challenges us on how to maintain personal contact, which has been the bedrock, the common theme of the analytic endeavor. This highlights the importance for us as analysts to come together, whether at APSA San Francisco last week or through this webinar like this one. It shows both components. It's not either or, it's yes and. For the purpose of making contact and learning, I've attended numerous congresses back to Prague's Congress in 2013. I endorse the compromise between the IPA and APSA, and I would be honored to be your representative. Thank you.
Okay, Dion. Okay, thank you very much. You finished before I say it's time. So thank you very much. Now I will introduce Jonah Shine, who has been involved with the IPA for the past 20 years as a member of its Budget and Finance Committee and Youth Advisory Committee. That, and it's his words, that might sound like a recipe for a nap, but it is where one learns about the intricacies of how the IPA sets its priorities and how it carries out its various functions. It is also a place where one meets with colleagues from the three regions and learns how to achieve compromises that further the goals of the organization. Now is a time when those skills will be needed so we can preserve both the independence of our component societies and the work of the IPA that enriches analytic practice globally. In APSA, Jonah served as a member of the Executive Council on the Budget and Finance Committee, as chair of the Committee on Certification and Membership, and as a trustee of PEP. Okay, go ahead, Jonah, please.
First, I want to thank the IPA for setting up this webinar, and I want to thank all of you who are joining us on Valentine's Day, taking your time away from loved ones, I hope. I am also, is not mentioned in that introduction is I'm a training analyst at Columbia and an associate clinical professor of psychiatry at Cornell, where I supervise residents. I've served on the IPA Budget and Finance Committee on 2 separate occasions and now serve on what's called the Dues Advisory Committee. And I have developed a belief that if you really want to understand an organization, you should understand how it raises money and how it decides to spend that money. And I have learned through those experiences a lot about how the IPA functions and how it tries to meet the various interests of its very diverse membership. I've learned how it uses a relatively modest budget to accomplish a great deal, and how to protect and develop psychoanalysis and psychoanalytic thinking around the world. I've learned how it sets priorities for research and for psychoanalytic education, to further develop theory and practice, and to support the fight for women's health and children's health. Budgeting in any organization requires an ability to negotiate compromises that preserve the organization's priorities. When it comes to making tough decisions, they have to be done where people come away feeling heard and respected. And I believe that my experience on those committees has taught me how to work on an international board. There are many in North America who are now questioning the value of belonging to the IPA. There are benefits to belonging to a worldwide organization whose membership numbers over 10,000. I do believe that bigger is better. We get to socialize, we get to learn from colleagues who practice in diverse ways and in diverse settings, but who believe in the value of analytic thinking. I believe in the value of having friends, especially at a time when in our country, and I guess in the world, there is so much emphasis on finding the things that divide us. During my work on these IPA committees, I have come to hear about and appreciate some of the resentment that has come from the regional status that APSA has had. There's an implied sense of entitlement that has gone with it. And we know from our own experience in APSA that when there are parts of the organization that are given special status, as we once gave BOPS status, it creates discord and resentment and divisiveness. I believe that we can keep our standards and that we can work to maintain our independence. I think one of the most important things that's come out of the new standards is the idea that there's going to be some research done to find out what does work as more people do tele-analysis. And I think this is a really important step. I'm having an experience right now where I am supervising a candidate at PANI, in fact, who has seen a patient in analysis only on tele-analysis until recently, when he has recently switched to having this person come in twice a week. So I am going to get to see how this works and what the differences are. I believe that the efforts that went into the recent IPA APSA work group are indicative of the kind of creativity that we need to bring to the study of psychoanalysis so that psychoanalysis can grow. This is an important issue for us. It divides us. And I think it will have an impact on all IPA members. I believe that we can give up our regional status, that it does it no longer serves a purpose in helping to preserve or promote psychoanalysis. And as an elected member from North America, my pledge is to represent all of North America, all of its members, in protecting and promoting psychoanalysis. So I would urge, most importantly, that everybody get out and vote, because as Bill pointed out, the numbers of people who do vote in these elections has historically been very low. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonah. I was about to tell you that the time was over, but thank you very much. So now I will introduce Neil Spira. Neil is a graduate of the Chicago Psychoanalytic Institute, where he served as dean from 2014 until 2019, and where he's on faculty as a training and supervising analyst. He's a director at the large of the American Psychoanalytic Association. He's a past president of the Chicago Psychoanalytic Society and former clinical assistant professor of psychiatry at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. So please, Neil, go ahead with your.
Thank you, Virginia. It's a formidable thing to be a part of this wonderful group, and I'm very pleased to be here. One of the first questions that was put to me in the process of putting my hat in the ring to be a representative was, what is my motivation for doing this? And I thought a great deal about that. So one motivation for me has to do with my current phase of life. I'm in the senior position, and I've wound down a good deal of my clinical practice at this point, which gives me more time to think about meaningful ways to be a psychoanalyst. And that's a part of my story. And I think that being a member of the IPA board would be a good use of the talents that I've acquired. The other thing that really motivates me is the fact that I think psychoanalysis is one of the true humanistic disciplines, and that as such, it's a potential force for eros, for good things in a world that is increasingly shrinking, digitizing, and troubled. And so for me, it's a very meaningful way to try to make a contribution to that world. In terms of platforms, like many who've spoken today, I think my basic position is that there's too much paranoia in the world, that we seem to regress to a paranoid position in many sectors, and that it seems there's tremendous talent at being able to push ourselves apart over just about anything. And so I think that it's important to recognize that and not succumb to it in any arena where people are coming together to try to aspire to a higher project. This has certainly been true in APSA, and the contentiousness around the current IPA proposal that we're going to be voting on has been a lightning rod for that as well. So that's my preface here, and the reason I think I'm qualified to be helpful here really has to do with I've had a lot of clinical experience, over 40 years of treating patients psychoanalytically, including psychoanalytic psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. I've had a lot of life experience. I think I know a lot about the world at this point, and I've had a lot of experience in psychoanalytic organizations. So that Virginia, as you so kindly introduced, I'm from Chicago. I'm a graduate of the Psychoanalytic Institute in Chicago. I have been involved in psychoanalytic organizations for a long time, and I'll just now outline some of what that experience is. I think most relevantly, as Dean of the Chicago Institute, I was pivotally involved in creating an international presence by opening our institute up as one of the first institutes, I believe, to Chinese candidates. And subsequently candidates from all over the world. We now have a very global program. This was not an easy thing. And in order to do this, it necessitated our becoming one of the earliest adapters of online education. This was also a fairly unique thing among the APSTA institutes. So, you might imagine that this kind of a change created a lot of tension within our own community. And, I'm glad to report that we were able to use these to grow instead of to fracture. And I'm very proud of that accomplishment. I've been involved in APSA since I graduated by Institute in about 2000. And at the time I came into APSA, we were also in the midst of a terrible dilemma. I remember Jonah from that time. I also remember the polarization that took place that was really painful. And I served as an alternate counselor originally for my society. Then I had a stint as what was called a counselor at large at that point. And I was involved in the move that APSA made away from becoming a principally regulatory organization to an educational community, and I think that process is still going on. And I think that this is, I think, a bedrock trajectory that occurred within the United States that has been not quite where the international community is, but I think it's been a good thing for APSA. And during my stint in Chicago as the director, there was a lot of conflict about this too, because of our own issues around training analyses. We came into conflict with the larger organization.
I'm sorry, Neil. You need to wrap up because
I spoke that much. I didn't know I had that.
No, I think 5 minutes.
I thought I was going to run out of time. That's fine.
No, I use this chronometer.
Perfect.
Sorry.
No problem.
Okay. You want to say something else, and then we will continue.
No, if it's 5 minutes, I abide by the rules. That's perfectly fine. Okay.
I'm sorry, but thank you very much. So now I will introduce Jeffrey Taxman, who is a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst practicing in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, USA for over 40 years. In addition to teaching and supervising in the United States and China, he has a specialty in massive community disaster, working with first responders and community leaders. This role has taken him to many different countries, and he has developed a sensitivity and expertise dealing with multiple cultures during severe divisive distress. Dr. Taxman has served on or chaired a number of committees and task forces within APSA, including the recent APSA IPA Working Group, and was recently the interim president-elect, serving APSA during a time of crisis and upheaval. He has been a member of the IPA for many years and would be honored to bring his experience and expertise to the IPA world. So we will listen now to Jeffrey.
Thank you. And thank you, audience attendees, for being here, and fellow panelists. As Neil said, quite an impressive group here, and everybody is extremely talented, qualified, and dedicated as analysts. So I was trying to think of what it is that I would like people to know about me and my experience that not only says what I've done, but really what you can expect from me as a member of the board, how you can expect me to behave, and how to work with the board and with the group we're representing. As Virginia mentioned, one of the strongest organizing aspects of my work for the last 25 years has been my disaster work. And what it's done for me is it's broadened the tenets and the practice that I've learned in psychoanalysis, both in training and experience. And it's added another dimension, and that is considering how multiple cultures that may have formed into subgroups under stress react to each other in a regressed, frightened way, and how I can bring understanding and work to get them through that, and to work together with other members of their community toward a common goal. And, I've often been asked, like when I was working as the interim president, how does that work help in an agency or in a group or in an institution? Well, as other members have talked about, there have been a lot of polarizing and very stressful situations. One, when I started as president-elect, that almost ripped APSA apart, and certainly still has reverberations of polarizing stresses. And the ability to understand where, quote, the other is coming from, what's important to them, in order to be able to communicate, is what's important. And with that, not only did I bring that to APSA as part of the executive committee as president-elect, but also I served on the task force and chaired the task force for implementing the Holmes Commission recommendations for APSA. And that was just being on that committee alone was considered divisive. But it was important to be able to take the very elaborate and well thought out Holmes recommendation and see how different institutes would be best able to move them forward. I was also a member of the COVID response task force, another situation in which there was so much fear and different concerns about how to move forward. And we found very good ways that people could speak together and figure out how to move forward as a psychoanalytic agency. And on the IPA APSA working group recently, finding common causes, common bridges, and mostly communicating to decrease the distrust and misunderstanding between APSA and the IPA was very important. And we found that we had so much in common and had common languages and were able to work together trustingly. So I know that the more we talk with each other as opposed to about each other, the more we can work together as both friends and colleagues to try to accomplish the goals of our institutions and agencies. And I'm aware that it takes time and repeated sincere efforts to empathically hear the person you're speaking with and to help bring a mutual respectful understanding to be able to have common purposes and consensus. And if elected, that's what I'll bring. I will be able to commit the time and the effort and that type of bridging, psychoanalytically informed work to make sure that the different institutions and associations can work together to further psychoanalytic work around the world. And I appreciate your support and your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And now I will introduce Lee Tobias. I was thinking that Lee, in a similar position because my last name starts with an U, so Lee. Lee Tobias, PhD, is a training and supervising analyst at the Psychoanalytic Center of California, PCC. She's also teaching faculty on the Infant Observation Committee. She has served as president of PCC, as recording secretary, and then president of the Confederation of Independent Psychoanalytic Societies, SIPS, in the United States, as secretary and then president of the North American Psychoanalytic Confederation, NAPSAC. She was a member also of the advisory group between IPA and the regional association, APSA, and have been a North American editor for the Interregional Encyclopedic Dictionary for Psychoanalysis, IREAD. So we will, you go ahead, please, Lee.
Thank you, Virginia. And I also am honored to be among this group of people, and I would love to be able to work together with many of you on the IPA board going forward. As Virginia noted in this introduction, I've been president of my society, president of SIPS, president of NAPSAC, a member of the IRED project, and also the first member of the first IPA APSA work group on the IPA APSA relations. And I thought maybe after listening to all of you, I would actually let you know where I stand, what those groups are, because SIPS, the Confederation of Independent Societies in the United States, is the group of independents, meaning independent from APSA. So the interest already in APSA and other IP relationships has been in my training from the beginning. And the North American Psychoanalytic Confederation, NAPSAC, consists of the United States societies, the Canadian societies, and the Pacific Rim societies of Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. And as a member of that group of NAPSAC, which I've been a member since for about 20 years, I've been recently the president-elect and president of that organization. I've been exposed greatly to different ways of thinking and working and cultural difference, time difference, and what it takes to try to integrate a kind of somewhat unwieldy group, which North America is. And so I come to the interest in running for the IPA board and continuing my depth of understanding of the different positions of APSA and SIPS, of APSA, IPA, of Pacific Rim, and the movement toward the fourth region, which I deeply respect. And I respect the different positions of these different groups in relation to one another and to IPA, and want to continue the discussions about remote training, which I think has been deeply and carefully researched for the past 4 years. I think it's important to remember it's about training, not practice itself, and what it means to train in psychoanalysis. And those are rich conversations that I hope continue. I think the issues of representation are very interesting, both between sizes of groups and different groups within North America, as well as within the IPA. And also, again, the development of the fourth region, where there may be a greater room for more voices and cultural differences and cultural conflicts, which help us learn what it means to be an international group. I am very interested in continuing the development of the fourth pillar of training, which is the influence of society and the group on our analytic work, as well as, we could say we're all a member of a group, and the group is also an entity in and of itself. The sensitivity and recognition of what the group is saying, as well as the individual, I think is very important on the IPA board. And I'm also very interested in the influence of climate change on all of us. There's such a, not only is there political threat, but climate threat with a lot of background of chaos and disaster, which is very, very important. I think all of you have been involved in efforts to address what happens to, our patients, our cities, our societies, our governments in response to these tremendous pressures, and what it means to maintain a psychoanalytic attitude and also be somewhat friendly toward one another with some of our differences, which, the threats tend to bring us together, I think is very important. So I like, IPA because I think it should maintain an interregional umbrella. I consider the richness engendered by comparing different models and different theoretical frameworks to be a strength of the IPA and of the IPA board composition. And I feel being a board representative involves being able to think pluralistically without conceding any of the rigor required by our discipline. And I also maintain it's the responsibility of IPA to uphold and transmit the values of psychoanalysis, both as a theory and a technique as they're applied to the current theoretical and practical and environmental developments and demands within psychoanalysis.
Thank you, Lee. We arrived at now, so we have only, I think, less than 20 minutes. I'm sorry, but the intention was and still is to ask you some questions. I think that I will only read one of them. And please, I think that even the 2 minutes I think that we won't be on time. So try to be very brief. So every presenter, one of you could say something. And I will read the first question that has to do with okay. Again, we will go in alphabetical order. So the question is, if elected, what steps would you take to ensure that you are kept adequately informed about the views of North American members, and how far would you feel bound to represent their views, taking into account other regional perspectives that may differ from your own personal views? So
Yes.
if you want to
Yes,
start,
yes.
I think that you have less than 2 minutes, but we will do our best because we will finish on time. Okay, so.
Okay. Yeah, I happen to have my training background in the US, so I've been working with people through my personal connections. That's one thing. When it comes to North American analyst, but when it comes to Asia Pacific region, I have more colleagues around me, and I think I feel more like I feel I'm in a unique position to speak for them, which I think would be very important. So I I speak periodically with my Japanese colleagues as well as Asia Pacific region colleagues through conferences taking places in Asia Pacific regions, online or in person. And my sense is that I want to represent as many kinds of voices as possible, because as an international organization, it's the diversity is very important, and I want to make sure that I reflect even minor voices as well. Maybe I stop here.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Fritsch.
Thank you, Virginia. It's an interesting question because, of course, it's more, all of our organizations are very diverse, so there's no one point of view in any organization. So to say you're going to represent that organization's or its members would be, I think, misleading. But I do think it's very important to stay in touch with, the leadership of North American psychoanalysis, and I know them and have good relations with them, and with the directors of training. And for the past years, I've been involved with the directors of training. There's a very good collegial contacts with them. They're on the front lines, and I think they have a very important role in shaping the future. And of course, one's own local institute. You should listen to what's going on at home. And so I would think I would be trying to blend those voices and have my own voice as well, and really try to represent what I think are the principles that I hear coming from my colleagues.
Thank you very much, Bill Glover.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I was looking at the attendance here. We have, at the maximum, we had 19 people who weren't part of us. And out of that, 17 of them were from North America. No, 12, only 12 from North America, and 7 counting the ones I knew and people I couldn't identify were from APSA. So that demonstrates the problem that we need to find a way to go to the members rather than expect them to come to us. And I think that online has that opportunity. Since COVID, I've been joining groups around the world, different things. I'm going to one in India where it's going to be Earl Hopper talking about massification and group dynamics. So it's fun, and you get to, but rank and file members around the world, and that really is what we need to find a way to do. So I think that means stretching ourselves. And as I say, I think we're responsible, certainly not to ourselves or only to our institutes or to our region, but to the IPA in general. But beyond that, I think we're responsible to the broader psychoanalytic community to represent our values and listen not only to IPA members, but the other folks in the psychoanalytic movement. Thank you.
Thank you. Margaret Ann, please.
Yes. Well, I think that it's a great pleasure, if to be on the board and to be then talking to friends all over North America that one has developed. I was on the education committee of APSA and the scientific program committee of APSA and so on, and on the quarterly for all these years. And throughout the Canadian, we have a National Assembly meeting in March, and I'll present to all the heads of the branches in Canada what we're doing in the IPA. So that function means that you sort of have an occasion to call friends and all around North America and say, look, this is what the IPA is thinking about. What are you thinking about this? And get feedback, which is really important to give to the board. And with respect to fitting that into the other regional perspectives, right? Of course, the French Canadians in Canada are always in touch with the French-speaking institutes in the world, so we have that connection. But it really has been wonderful to be on the board. I think, Maria and So and Bill, and to work as a group in North America also, in which we share all of our common knowledge of the North American perspective, and then stop and think there really are forces at work, situations, conditions, cultures of psychoanalytic thinking, theoretically and clinically, that are strong and need to be respected elsewhere. And bringing those from North America and hearing all of the other regional perspectives really gives us a rich thinking about how to come to compromises, which is what the board's work is. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, Maria Nardone.
Yes, thank you for this question. And in terms of staying informed, I haven't found the link function to be as useful as I would have hoped. But I thought that the listserv that was set up for IPA members, I think at Bill Glover's suggestion, has been helpful. And the other thing I thought was very helpful when there's an issue are the town halls. I learned a lot from those small groups about what people were thinking about in other areas. And I think possibly also at annual meetings, we meet people, and maybe there could be something formal at the Congress and local annual meetings to have a get-together about IPA issues. And in terms of being on the board, it is challenging to maintain an international mindset while at the same time keeping in mind issues of the local regions and leaving room for plurality. It is challenging, but that's always been my goal to think about the broader picture. And I think my experience in living abroad and working with people abroad has helped expand that for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Now we will hear Dion Powell. You have to unmute.
Hi, yes, I'll try to be quick. It's hard for me to answer that one question, but I just want to pick up on a couple of things that we talked about. I believe virtual analysis is actually, sometimes we see it in a deficit model, but it's really helped to expand. For instance, I had one supervisee who was only seeing his patient 3 times a week, and virtual analysis allowed them to see their patient 5 times a week, and then went on to see every patient, all their control cases 5 times a week. So there's value in being able to figure out and work out how these programs can exist. And I also want to talk a little bit about the ability to recognize your mistakes. In the Holmes Commission formation, there were things we omitted that we had to own up to. For instance, we did not initially have a social worker in our 20 group cohort. And we're doing a trauma workshop right now at Columbia, and we forgot to talk about women in the midst of a year-long planning. And so be able to acknowledge where your blind spots, bright spots are, I think it's really important to be on a board and be able to acknowledge that. And instead of, beating up on someone because of their position, to be able to be more open and see how we all are involved in this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dion. And now, Jonah Shine.
Thank you. I think that question is one that touches on the tension that I think faces anyone who accepts and achieves an elected position, is how much do you represent your own views and how much do you represent the views of your constituents? And I think I definitely know that I have a stubborn streak in me, and I've tried to make it clear what some of my positions are. But I also know that I am able to listen and to be able to change my views when I am convinced that I have missed something, and I often do miss things. I think there's also the other part of the question is about needing to reach out to the constituents and to educate them. I was the faculty rep on the Columbia Executive Committee for a number of years. And one of the things that I actively did was develop a way of communicating minutes from those meetings to the faculty, which was a way of trying to involve them. And so I think following in some of the steps that Bill started in reaching out, using email to bring in people, to get them interested and get them to know what the IPA is doing, is going to be a very important thing going forward, especially with the kind of controversies that are facing us.
Thank you very much. Neil Spira now. You have to unmute.
I got it. Yeah. The first step I take, I think, is to recognize it's not an I question, it's a we question. And so what I would do is to reach out to the other members of North American members of the board and acknowledge this is an important issue and work on it together. And I want to give Bill a shout out here too. I think I've heard more about the IPA in the last few years than I ever heard about it. Never had anything like this before, in fact, in an election. So that's part one. The second, I agree with Jonah. There's a tension, between representing the views of others and one's own. And I think anytime you're on a board, the idea is to try to present the views of others. But in terms of the fiduciary responsibility, it's to the board, the mission of the organization. And I think I'd make up my own mind, and according to my best judgment. And that's what we got. So less than 2.
Thank you very much. Now, Jeffrey Taxman.
Thank you. Actually, this is a 4-part question, quite clearly. And the easy one for me is the last, which is, what if it differs from my personal view? If I'm elected, I'm not there to be Jeffrey Taxman. I'm there to represent my representatives. That also then addresses the first one, which is how far will you go? I'm there to represent North America. And it's one of the reasons in my introduction, I told you more about how I operate, less than who I am and what I think. So in the bridging fashion, I will take what my representatives want me to bring to the board, as well as bring from IPA back to my representatives. And lastly, taking into account other regional perspectives, crucial. And again, that's where the international work I've done with people under stress is important. One quick example, during our working group, Dick will remember this, we were wrapping up all excitedly about how great we had collaborated together, and we're going to put that into the statement. And Heribert looked like I hit him in the face. He said, you cannot use that word. What word? Collaborator. Because to certain communities, to be a collaborator was a devastating comment. And we as Americans had to know that if we were going to communicate as colleagues and friends and respectfully with people in Europe. It's that way that I will bring things from North America to IPA and IPA back to the North America.
Thank you. Now we will hear Lee Tobias.
Well, I will just say quickly that NAPSAC has been bringing the North American representatives together at least once a year to talk to at least the NAPSAC board. We open it to the NAPSAC membership, and that's one way that we, link what's going on with the IPA board to the North American membership. It can always be enhanced. There could be more people attending, but that's one way to do it. And another way is to use a kind of newsletter, which I think might be helpful to send out. The APSA listserv doesn't actually include all of North America, so there might be a way to expand that just a little bit more. So it might be open, but I don't know that it's known. And those are ways that the IPA board work, or that the work that we do and I do if elected, could be shared and receive feedback.
Thank you, Lee. And now I think that we have only 2 or 3 minutes. So I would like to thank you all for the big effort you made, in putting together your ideas in a very small fragment of time and be clear. And it was, from my point of view, a very interesting session, this one. Thank you very much. And also I want to thank also to the technical team that made it possible. And this is, okay, I wish you the best for the forthcoming election. It was a very interesting, even it wasn't possible to discuss, but the question was so wide that allowed you to say in 2 minutes what you think about the role of a representative on the IPA board, and you brought very interesting ideas. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia,
you.
and everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Virginia.
everybody.
Right on time.
Nice meeting
Right
you.
on
Thank you,
time.
Virginia.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.